Vietnam, 1968. Near the Demilitarized Zone. A Marine platoon is ambushed. Outnumbered, their backs to the sea. All escape routes are cut off. They call for air support. None available. They call for ground artillery. Silence. Desperation sets in. And then, through the static, a voice comes over the radio. Calm, authoritative, almost otherworldly. They look out to sea, but see nothing. Only an empty horizon. But 25 miles away, the most powerful steel monster in the world, a relic of the Second World War, had just awoken to answer their call. But in Vietnam, the United States was paying a heavy price. The bombing campaign over North Vietnam was meeting a dense and sophisticated air defense system. Loss rates for aircraft and pilots were rising to alarming levels. At the Pentagon, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara needed a solution. A powerful, reliable, all-weather fire support platform that didn't risk pilots' lives. His answer was a controversial turn, back in time. Deep in the Naval Reserve Fleet, a giant was sleeping. The USS New Jersey. A relic of World War II. Many in the modern Navy scoffed at the idea. Bringing a dinosaur to a modern battlefield. It was deemed too big, too obsolete, and too expensive to operate. But the New Jersey possessed something no modern warship had. A belt of steel armor nearly 20 inches thick, and 9 16-inch guns. McNamara was betting on this RAW power. After a rapid modernization process, in April 1968, the USS New Jersey was recommissioned. It became the only active battleship in the entire world. A living paradox. A World War II gladiator, armed with colossal guns, was heading into a modern guerrilla war. The most expensive experiment in naval history had begun. And it was about to redefine the concept of fire support. September 1968, the USS New Jersey arrives on the gun line. Its mission: to be the most powerful floating fortress in the world. And that power originated here. 9 16-inch or 406mm Mark 7 guns. Each turret weighed more than a modern destroyer, protected by nearly 20 inches of armor plating. These massive guns could fire armor-piercing shells weighing up to 2,700 pounds. To put it simply, the New Jersey was capable of hurling an object with the same weight as a Volkswagen Beetle. And it could hurl those cars a distance of nearly 25 miles. At the peak of their trajectory, the shells flew more than 3 times the height of Mount Everest, reaching supersonic speeds as they plunged toward the target. The destructive power was apocalyptic. A single high-explosive shell could blast a crater 50 feet deep and clear an area the size of a football field. It could turn dense jungle into a helicopter landing zone instantly. But the numbers cannot fully describe the true power of the New Jersey. It had to be experienced with the senses. When it fired at night, its flash turned night into day in an instant. The shock wave traveled across the ocean, powerful enough to suck the air out of your lungs if you stood too close. But the most haunting thing for the soldiers on the ground was the sound of the shells passing overhead. Because they moved faster than sound, the shell arrived before its own report. It created a ferocious, tearing roar that ripped the air apart. Veterans describe it as a freight train roaring right next to you, or a dump truck cutting through the air. It was an unnatural experience, inverting the sequence of sound and destruction. A terrifying, psychological event. Roar power would be meaningless without accuracy. How could the New Jersey fire so precisely from such a great distance? The answer lay deep inside the ship, in main battery plot. This was the New Jersey's brain. And it was not digital. At the center of the room was the Mark VIII Rangekeeper analog computer, a multi-ton mechanical marvel of thousands of gears and differentials. It constantly solved complex ballistic equations, accounting for dozens of variables. The ship's own speed and course, wind speed, air density, and the temperature of the propellant. And at extreme ranges, they even had to account for the curvature of the Earth and the Coriolis effect, the rotation of our planet. Without this adjustment, a shell could miss its target by hundreds of yards. This process depended on eyes on the battlefield. The forward observers. They identified the target and sent the coordinates. One day, a fire mission came in from over 20 miles away. The target? A single structure on a hilltop. They fired the first round to calibrate. The spotter radioed back. Enemy have just entered the structure. Right 50 yards, add 100 yards. The technicians in main battery plot quickly input the data. The massive turret shifted by a fraction of a degree and fired. 90 seconds later, the observer came back on the line, his voice filled with astonishment. I don't know if you've got him, but the hilltop is gone. That was the ability to reshape the terrain on demand from over the horizon. A lethal combination of peak mechanical engineering and human skill. This combination of destructive power and extraordinary precision created a legend in the fields of Vietnam. The New Jersey had two faces. For the soldiers on the ground, it was the guardian angel. When a unit was pinned down, outnumbered, and facing annihilation, that voice on the radio, "This is the New Jersey," was the sound of salvation. They sent their coordinates, and minutes later, they heard that sound. The air-tearing roar of the freight train. Then the ground would shake violently. The enemy's position would be turned into a hell on earth. The attack would cease instantly. For those soldiers, Big J was the answer to their prayers. It was the voice of God, delivering salvation by gunfire. But for their enemy, it was the embodiment of inescapable destruction. They called it the Black Dragon. The shriek of its shells and their terrifying explosive force became a source of deep psychological trauma. The mere presence of the New Jersey severely degraded enemy morale. This psychological power was fully exploited. One anecdote tells of a leaflet dropped after a barrage. "You have just been shelled by the world's most powerful battleship. If you do not surrender in 10 minutes, you will receive another volley." Many enemy soldiers surrendered. The threat of total annihilation had broken their will to fight. During its short but incredibly intense tour in Vietnam, from September 1968 to April 1969, the New Jersey operated almost non-stop. It fired a colossal amount of ordnance. 5,688 16-inch shells and nearly 15,000 5-inch shells. This was more ammunition than it had fired in both the Second World War and the Korean War combined. An unprecedented display of firepower. But this display came at a steep price. The cost of operating the New Jersey was enormous. As the Nixon administration sought to cut defense spending and shift strategy, the giant's fate was sealed. In December 1969, the USS New Jersey was decommissioned for a second time. The thunder over the South China Sea fell silent. The legacy of the New Jersey in Vietnam is complex. Strategically, its presence did not change the final outcome of the war. It was a situational weapon, limited by geography. But tactically, and more importantly in human terms, its impact was immeasurable. It saved countless lives. Although the ship would go on to serve again in the 1980s, its time in Vietnam remains the most intense and paradoxical chapter of its career. It was the last stand of the age of the gun against the age of the missile. Proof that even in an era of high technology, raw, overwhelming, and precise firepower still held an irreplaceable value. The USS New Jersey had arrived in Vietnam as an obsolete relic and left as a legend. A legend born from the desperate needs of soldiers and answered by the thunder of the world's most powerful battleship. The story of the USS New Jersey is a testament to the endurance of technology and human courage. What aspect of Big J's firepower impressed you the most? And if you or a loved one have stories about this ship, please share them in the comments below. And so you don't miss more in-depth analysis of military history and the technology of war, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. Thank you for watching.